because one of the things is very important. You're asking how you deal with politics. I mean, you have to understand the politics, so read about it and talk with people from the country itself when you arrive, not the international community, but people from the country. Taxi drivers are very important.
Yes, they know.
People in the shops, they know, they really know. And then you should not condemn the politics, but stay with your own principles. Am I willing to do business in this country? What affects you? It's not only the money which counts, but it's only you have to, well, your spiritual part of it as well.
That's, you know, and one thing that you said really resonated with me. You cannot condemn the politics, but you do have to stay within your own values.
Absolutely.
And so when you said that, it reminded me of what Shayla said during her introduction about her journey to coffee and the coffee business was really routed in her spiritual self.
Right.
And so Shayla, tell us a little bit more about, as you think about going global, and as you look at different markets, a little bit of the narrative that you are working through in your mind when you think about going into countries that might not share the same values as you. So you mentioned a very popular multinational coffee company during your introduction, and made it very clear that, you know, you might have been drinking the wrong coffee, not to say anything negative about that company. But talk to us a little bit, especially in the coffee business, right? Because there are a lot of narratives around the coffee business and the values and ethics around the coffee business that aren't necessarily positive these days. And so talk to us a little bit about, as a woman, a young Black woman going into this business with certain spiritual values, and I'm sure certain ethics and certain goals that you want to see on the health side of things, as you mentioned, how you plan to navigate that, or even questions that you might have around how you navigate those values as you go out into the world to sell your product.
So that's a really great question. So initially, I always think this little seed, it's like very small, can open a world of opportunities. That's my first thought. So I'm thinking, okay, now which country do I want to talk to? So I go to trade.gov or export.gov, and I do market intelligence just to see, does my product initially fit there? What's the cultural landscape? I'll Google, you know, what is the local newspaper that's in, let's say, Puerto Rico? And I'll see, because people, like she said, taxi drivers, they'll talk to you, they know everything. And so I'll see exactly like what's going on a local level. And then I'll do my investigation. I'll call, you know, an organization that's local there and talk to them. Like you said, it's a lot of courting at first. It's a lot of getting to know the individual at first, or the organization. And then I'll come from a standpoint, why we chose like Costa Rica or Cameroon was because, you know, they're not paying their farmers, well, I won't say they, there are other corporations that are not paying farmers or people proper wages. And that's a concern to me. There should be no reason why a farmer can plant something and then the whole world can enjoy. The industry is a $48 billion industry and they're eating pennies. That is a problem to me. So for our brand, we literally pay the farmer first. And we're paying the farmer first, but we're not just paying them money because everything is not about money, but we're also investing into their mental state, their creative state. I'm a very creative person, so that's important to me because I think creativity is genius. That's our genius connection, is if you're, you know, creative, and that's creative with a little c or big C. But tap into your creative side because that's the genius part of you. So that's where it all, that's how I go through literally a whole process before I just select a place. Like right now I'm looking at Puerto Rico and I'm looking at, you know, what's another country that I'm looking at? Singapore. That I'm looking at those two countries. I've been to Hong Kong. It's great, but I don't know if Hong Kong is where we're gonna be initially, right? So that's where I'm looking from doing the research standpoint. That's how I go through that process.
That's great. And so, Adrienne, I'm going to turn it over to you because, and you can react to what the two ladies just said, but then I'm going to ask you because both Koosje and Shayla told us how they do their research to enter into the market, what they do, And you as a consultant, having worked with companies, I'm sure oftentimes you hear them tell you what they do and what they plan to do. And I'm sure oftentimes in your head, and maybe out loud, you're thinking, yeah, no, not so much. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the missteps that you see people making, that you see businesses making again and again, even across different countries, right? Koosje mentioned the fact that China is different, but the same in many ways to Senegal. So I'm sure some of the mistakes and missteps that companies make, they make again and again in different countries that they're trying to enter. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Thank you. So I would say the biggest misstep that we see as American companies is that we operate as American companies. And I can't underscore that enough. So what Koosje said about making sure that you understand the culture, you don't go in, it's not even talking about business. You are literally going to be invited into people's homes. For women, you have to understand the culture for women if you plan to do business. So with my team, we would take men, and our team was very diverse in nature. You have to understand historically what has happened. So it's not just about what's happening today in the political environment, but there are long-standing historical issues that are rooted with cultural experiences in various countries. And so as you look at the makeup of your team, if you have someone on the team that may be from a different background and you're not aware of the historical impact, it can reflect negatively on your opportunity to even try to move business forward. A lot of people don't take advantage of the U.S. embassies here. So I would say, before you step out, because a lot of people say, we want to go global. So they just take a trip, they land over there, they go to a conference and expect to begin doing business. It does not work that way. It will be the longest process probably that you ever experience. So what typically happens is we go over, we're impatient as Americans, right? You think that I can do 3 meetings and my deal should be done. It's probably 2 years worth of meetings. And if you're not willing to put the investment in, a lot of times we go just thinking that, we'll spend money on conferences and things like that to have our logo displayed, but you haven't spent the time working with the bankers, which will take a longer process, working with the attorneys, working with the embassy, working with the chambers. So it's a very complex model, but I would say that our biggest issue is operating as Americans, because the capitalism, the working late at night, if you're there sending emails to them late at night, that does not work for them. Because they typically are, well, depending on your country, but most, it's more of a relaxed, relationship-oriented environment. So I can't say enough about that. Before you go overseas, spend time at the U.S. Embassy in D.C. because they will assist you. Number one, in doing your market analysis and research, they will tell you, especially if you need funding, where the government will actually assist in funding particular projects. So you may have a phenomenal product here, but there's no market for it there, although they will entertain you in their country, right? But realistically, there's no financial backing that's going to be able to be there to support what you'd like to implement. So before spending a lot of money or wasting a lot of money in a particular country, build the relationships here first with the embassy. They will let you know, and they will also help you navigate because they know all the key players. They know all of the programs, whether it's with the World Bank or OPIC, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. They will help you and assist you to get your deals done faster, but it may not be as fast as what you expect dealing with American business.
So two key words right now that I've picked up on already. Relationships and patience.
Yes.
Relationships and patience.
And a lot of capital.
And a lot of capital. And a lot of capital. We'll talk about that a little bit. But Adrienne, I feel like you touched upon something that is to me, so my background is in trade policy. So I was a trade negotiator at home in Canada, negotiating trade deals on behalf of my country. So really on the policy end of the spectrum when you talk about going global. And one thing that I have noticed being here in my role working with Canadian companies and working with American companies who are looking to go abroad and invest into Canada is this whole idea of international business development. A lot of times people and companies are very focused, and rightly so, on making those connections and building those relationships abroad in the countries for which they are trying to enter and penetrate, but oftentimes don't do enough of the leg room, the leg work at the front end to build the relationships at home, as Adrienne very correctly said, and that a little like ding, ding, ding went off in my head. Building the relationships at home that are going to support you in your journey as you move abroad. And again, your journey not just in getting your product to market, but the journey in getting you those stacks of capital that you need, those fat stacks. Do the kids still say that, or is it have they moved on to something else? Right, to getting that capital that you need, or maybe that's just a Canadian term. That's what we say. Fat stacks. And frankly, and oftentimes getting you connected to local people in the country that you are looking to penetrate, you're looking to enter, to make sure that if what is important to you is paying your workers more than just a living wage, right? Paying your workers, whatever it is that you would like to pay them, or finding a particular skill, especially if you're talking about construction and engineering, that is a particular skill set. And so oftentimes, the people who will help you the most at the front end of that process and that journey are your own people, whether that be in Washington, D.C. or around America, or in the country where you are going. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of what Adrienne mentioned in engaging for you all the embassy. The embassy, the U.S. embassy in the country that you are going to. Find the capital city, you will have an embassy there or an embassy close by, and then spending time in D.C. Absolutely 100%. And then the other question that I had, Adrienne, and I'll throw it back to you, because in your consulting work, I'm sure that you've had a lot of experience in this, is can you talk a little bit about how to navigate the different business systems that exist in other countries? So when I say business systems, I'm talking about the regulations, the rules. So not the unwritten rules, i.e. don't email me at 10 o'clock and expect an answer at 10:15 p.m. because I'm not necessarily asleep, but I'm with my family. And family time is very important in country X, right? We don't work 24 hours a day like we do in North America. Not those types of challenges, but really about the regulatory challenges and the actual challenges that companies will face when they're trying to enter a market from the business systems point of view, and a few tips that you might have given other companies in the past or that you might be able to share with us today.
So I would say that similar to the way we do business here, get the right team in place, right? So I mentioned having the right financial person or financial ally. Choose your bank early because they are on top of different regulations that are taking place in country, but they're also pushing legislation, because if it's a country that is interested in foreign direct investment coming in, they will know before you will and a lot of others in the public what's happening, because the banking industry is going to actually help to move that. Working with the political folks in the country, depending on which country you're operating in, because those are your legislators, right? So they will assist you along that way. And then your attorney. You have to have a really, really, really solid attorney and accountant. The accountant piece is critical for your taxes, because some countries will lock your money in, and we don't understand that. When you come and do business in different countries, it's not very easy to get your money back out. So all of those
China.
regulatory
China.
issues, China is one.
The hold on.
There are so many issues that are contrary to the way that we even think. So my recommendation would be have that team, accountant, attorney, right? Have your strategist, and that's typically somebody in the embassy that will be able to see overall, both in the US as well as in the home country, okay, overall. I mentioned the taxes, attorney,
Finance.
that's it, and someone in, and you mentioned this, someone in country. So, and let me just mention a little bit about that. Similar to the way we set up companies here where you need a registered agent, right? You should have a registered agent in country, and they will allow you to do two things. One, you may have an operating office, so it gives you a presence in country, because a lot of people come to the country, they don't want to spend time if you're really not vested in their country. So again, I'm talking about the 3 meetings, or we come back every 6 months, versus if you were in the US, you're meeting weekly over a period of time. So having someone in country that you can rely on to assist you with doing those meetings and keeping the face-to-face is extremely important and critical.
Yes, I wanted to add something to the local touch points that we were talking about. Find a sister country or a sister city to the United States or to Atlanta. That's a really great place to start. The city of Atlanta has international affairs. That's an awesome place to start. Join an incubator that focuses on international exposure. Here in Atlanta, we have the amazing We Atlanta, and it's weatlanta.com, and they literally have opportunities and exposure that when you're part of the incubator that you get exposed to. We've had diplomats, we've had consulates, we have all kind of amazing groups that come to speak to us, and it's really opened my eyes even further. So, you know, that's another thing. And then export.gov, they have this opportunity called Gold Key Services, where they do business matching. You're here in the States, but they can also, after you do your market analysis, they'll help, and they can do business matching with here in the country that you want to aspire to go to. So that's another one. And East West Bank, like what Ms. Adrienne was mentioning, that is a bank that has local roots here, but also has their portfolio is international. And they really focus in the Asian countries. So you can actually have an account here. It's East West Bank off of Paces Ferry. And you can really have a conversation with them from your local business operations and global operations.
Yes, I think it's a very good advice to at least get in touch with your embassy, but we also have, at least in the Netherlands, that's the Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency. That is for free, because you mentioned an attorney and a fiscalist, accountant. That might cost a lot of money. And you might get in touch with the Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency, for example, and they will get you in touch with the people on the spot back in the Netherlands. And I'm sure that other countries do have the same. And try to figure out through your embassy what kind of networks, women networks, are existing in the countries. We have in the Netherlands, for example, the Next Women Network, and they provide also finance, or at least get in touch with investors and with banks. So again, the key is, do your research and let your embassy or consulate help you with that. But first of all, get clear what you want. If you go to the embassy or to the consulate, which happens, I want to go to the United States to start my business over there. Yes, and what kind of research did you do? What kind of business? What aim? Where in the United States? I mean, go to your embassy with a clear question, what your aim is, and the time spread, because as you said, it's not done in 6 months. And do you have enough money, enough energy to wait a year, 2 years, sometimes it takes 3 years to reach your goal? So on beforehand, you have to have that clear.
Absolutely, yes, please jump in.
So I just want to add, if you're not clear on what you'd like to do, if you'd like to be on the ground, look at a trade mission. So I know there's several organizations that do trade missions, and you may want to invest in that opportunity, because they will allow you to do some exploratory interaction with companies that are on the ground. They'll do a mini matchmaking opportunity for you so that you can kind of see if that is really for you or not without jumping all the way in and spending money that you may wish that you had not done that by taking a few trade missions to actually choose the right country in which to do business.
Yeah, absolutely. And so very practical advice, right? Things that you can actually start doing today and things that you can write down to do tomorrow and as you move along the journey to exporting or to going global or finding that job abroad. Very practical examples from all three of our panelists. But what I wanted to take a few minutes on now that you all have the practical advice, because sometimes, we have the practical tools, right? We know what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to do our research. We're supposed to make those connections. We're supposed to establish those relationships. We're supposed to make sure that we understand the local context. And sometimes we do all of those things. And we still hit roadblocks. And in fact, when Adrienne mentioned the trade missions, it really resonated with me because I do find that now, especially in the United States, in Canada, and in other countries around the world, this idea of trade missions, the idea of getting a group of companies, of business persons, of entrepreneurs together to take a trip into the market is becoming quite popular. And it's becoming popular, one, absolutely, to give you a little bit of a flavor for what that country could potentially offer you and what some of the challenges could be in that country. But two, and again, we need to remember that we are here at WICERS. We are here at the Women in Construction, Engineering, and Related Services Conference because we are talking about women entrepreneurs in particular and what it takes to become successful in the realm of construction, engineering, and related services. And so I wanted to bring it back a little bit and have a little bit of a conversation with the panels. And I'm going to give you a twist though, because I'm going to challenge you, and I'm going to give you my bias first up. So my question is to you, as women in business, right? Women entrepreneurs, women business leaders, talk a little bit about the particular challenges that you have faced in either getting a job abroad, doing business abroad, setting up your company abroad, and attracting talent when you go abroad as a woman, as a young woman in business in particular. And then here's the twist, because my bias is this, and I applaud Daphne actually, because I see men in the audience, which makes my heart sing, I can tell you. Because my biggest pet peeve when we have these Women in X conferences is that the room is full of women. And that's great. We can all have our love-ins, and we can all talk ad nauseum about hardships and how it's so difficult, and how we need sponsors and mentors, and how we need men to step up. But frankly, and this is a problem globally now, what happens is we are talking into an echo chamber because we are all talking to ourselves, right? And so my twist to you is, and please, let's talk about the challenges, right? You can only do better if you're willing to talk about what is wrong in the first place. So I'm not saying that we don't need to talk about that. But I also want you to talk about who in your ecosystem, who in your environment, and pick a man if you can, right? Honestly, talk about the women, but talk about the men who are already in your fields, who lifted you up, who gave you a hand, and what exactly they did that has helped you. And if you don't have one, tell us what you are looking for. When we say we need men to step up, when we say we need men to make a difference, to extend their hand, what do we mean in practical abstract terms. You all gave us great concrete examples of what we have to do. I want the same concrete examples. I want to have a discussion about those concrete examples of what men who are already doing it and doing it well in the field can do to help women who are facing challenges, who are looking to get into the industry, whatever industry that is, and you all represent different industries. Concrete examples of what we need them to do. We have men in the room. They're going to go home. They're going to tell their brothers or sisters, their friends. They're going to go and tell their people, right? So give us some concrete examples. So first, talk about the challenges in your individual fields as women, and then talk about some of the good things that have happened to you and the good concrete ways that men have contributed to your success, to lifting you up, so that they can go and tell their other friends as to what they need to do in the future. All right? We're going to start with you, Shayla. Yeah.
So let's see, so my challenges has been not really understanding the cultural landscape of other countries. Because I am, let's get it done, factual, let's go. But when you work in other countries, that's not how it is. And I had to learn that the hard way. I used to be a handbag designer, and I had some products in NFL stores, contacting China. I didn't know anything about the Chinese New Year. Had no idea. I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm texting, I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my God, is my business about to burn? Like, my supplies are gone? Had no idea. Now, and I cannot pronounce her name at this moment, but the Chinese supplier basically called me 3 weeks later and said, oh, we had Chinese New Year. And I'm like, oh, so what's that? You know, so I say that not understanding the cultural landscape was a big challenge of mine. And so I really had to pivot. The key word is pivot. And so now that I understand that, I'm like, okay, this is better. And so for as men, let me answer that question. So my father is very dear to me. And if you were here yesterday, you would have seen him. My father is was an executive for MARTA. And it took a couple of years, and he really wanted me to go through the trenches on my own. And I was really upset about that. I was like, this is my idea. This is what I want to do. And as my dad, he's like, let me see it. And that's one thing that I admire about men. They're not just talking. They want to see it being done. And so I appreciated that, because that gave me another skill set to work with as a woman. So that was one thing. And then I've had numerous men actually just support, listen, provide resources, and it's been amazing. So I agree with you, Nadia, is that we cannot exclude them from the conversation. They are our allies, and we can learn from them. But there are criterias. The man that you have that's going to support you, or the group of men that's going to support you, they need to understand your vision. They need to be on board with understanding you as a woman and where you're trying to go. They cannot be a naysayer, because some men are like, oh, you can't do that. But then there are some men out there that are like, you can do this, and this is how you can do this. And let's set accountability schedules to see you do your goal. So just know that they are your allies, and my number one ally has been my father. And not knowing, until you go through the journey, but he has been my ally the whole time. Yeah, so.
Thank you. Good for you. Yeah. Well, there are two things that trigger me. That's why do women always need to have somebody says, you can do it? Mm-hmm. And a lot of men do think, I can do that.
Yes.
Yeah, they already think that.
And the same thing in business or in a career, we always are a little bit shy. Are we able to do that? I don't know. Mm-hmm. We have to be firm and saying, I can do that. That's one of the things we need to know. I do have an example that was actually an ambassador who said to me, you are really good, you can do that. Okay, then I can do that. But the funny things in business, in careers, while women have to prove that they can do it, of men they say, I see potential. I think he might be able to do that. Why is that? So I agree with you. Isn't it true? And we confirm that. We say, I don't know. I have to be better prepared. So my advice would also be, don't be shy. Be convinced. Get an ally with a man, indeed, because that's important. We can't do it on our own. We need to look for people, I mean, you know.
Already there.
Well, already, you know my Consul General, Art van der Voort, he is an amazing example of inclusion. I mean, I'm very well aware that we have to promote women. I mean that if you want to have a good business, you have to have a balanced team. Inclusion, I mean, diversity is a fact, but inclusion is a choice. So we have to spread that out as well, that if you want to have a balanced team to work with, and that can also be somebody from another country who can help you further away, but it has to be inclusion to also say to him, hey, did you think about that? Oh, well, that's right, I didn't think about it. Thank you for advising me. So that is one of the things. So a few things triggered me that in fact, why are we so shy? Why are we saying, I don't know if I'm able to do that? You can.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrienne.
So I would say the challenges are not dissimilar to what you see here as a woman doing business, right? So people are going to see you show up and they're already going to have their preconceived notions of what that means. Either you're not as smart, you're not going to be aggressive, whatever. You're too young, you're too old. All of those things will exist. And so I think the first thing is just to be confident in what you have to deliver and offer, but you also have to look and see how you're aligned with whatever their challenge or issue is. The same way we do business here. My advocates in various countries, I'm going to give you two examples. I'm going to talk about Senegal as one of the countries and Botswana because they're very different. So when you're doing your research in Botswana, the women run the country. The head of the Federal Reserve Bank, the head of the banks, all women. Okay, so that's why you need to understand the countries. Number two, if you look at, the World Bank has a study that comes out that talks about the countries that have the least amount of corruption, right? Botswana, top of the list. Women, run by women. Okay, and I point that out for a reason. We have to think about, you're dealing with people. And people and gender, no matter where you are in the world, it is the same. Okay? So as women, if you show up, there's a power of the skirt. If you're in a country like Senegal, where everything is run by men, okay? And that's no different than if you're doing business here in the US, because we are different. So my advocates were, I aligned with people at the embassy because I wanted to make sure that I was able to ask from a government standpoint what I would like to receive. But number two, I used the opportunity to educate. So it wasn't in a condescending way, but we do have inclusion initiatives in the US. So it was an opportunity when in Senegal to actually talk about, sometimes the teams in the US were comprised differently. And we work differently because we think differently. So the women may bring a little bit more detail. So maybe for this particular project, would you consider having this team being offered and bringing in some additional vendors that we'll find for you?
Yes.
To come to the table. Okay, so I was staying focused on what I needed to do for my clients, right? But also looking at the fact that I'm a woman and I want to win and succeed there, but bringing in our expertise from things that we have seen in our country and introducing it to them in a way that they could receive it and accept it. So you may not start out with the largest contract, same thing here, no different, right? You pay your dues, you take the small steps, and then eventually you grow to where you can have those larger contracts when you've proven yourself. So those are the things that I would put on the table. But my advocates have always come from the embassies because they want to keep the good relations with the US. You promote, don't look at being a woman as, a detriment or a liability. Nobody wants to hear about your liabilities. They only want to hear about the assets. So as women, we do certain things differently. We're more detailed, typically, right? We will pay attention to things that in the environment that others may just overlook. highlight those, and they're the softer skills. It's not just about this is how much money you're gonna make, it's all those other things that you can bring into play. So in a meeting, you may hear them say, our workforce isn't prepared. So when you go with your contract, you make sure that you're doing a train the trainer model, okay, to make sure that you're leaving those things behind. And then you ask the male counterpart to promote those things for you on your behalf. But you have to, no one's gonna give it to you, just like here. You have to ask for it. And you tell the men what you want and how you want them to do it. And that may look like, this is how much I want in the contract, I'll take a smaller piece, and then let's look and graduate to the next after I've proven, after whatever time period you all agree. But they're not going to openly just say, hey, I'm gonna give it to you. The other thing that I would mention too, when it comes to certain countries, if you do your research, make sure that I would recommend having a man on your team who works for you, okay? And there's certain protocols, if you will, how you shake hands is very different in various countries. Even though I might be the boss, I will have my male counterpart lead and introduce certain things, and then when it comes to the presentation, they see that it's a woman. So all of those things are kind of important, but they're the softer psychological skills that you need to have. And so I would say that your advocate can be inside your company or outside to help you get the things done that you need to. Because oftentimes in projects, I will do the groundwork, I'll send other people to make sure that we get in the door, and then we'll give the shock value, but then I also leave again and let the men do it. So don't also feel as if because you're a woman, you have to always be out in front and always do these things. You have to play the game based on what the culture is so that you win.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something that we are, as women, not always aware that we are not talking directly. We're not saying clearly what we want.
Yes.
And we have to understand that men and women listen differently
That's
to
right.
phrases,
That's
what
right.
you're saying. So we,
Cross-culturally. Yes.
that is
Especially
also,
cross-culturally.
that especially cross-culturally, because we as Dutch, we might be considered as too direct.
Yes.
Oh, you confirm that.
Agreed.
So we have to be aware of that as well. But even between women and men, it's different, because a man will not hear to you if you're saying, well, what do you think about my new product? I would like to have, there are too much words around it.
Yeah.
So those kind of, I agree with you that we have to be soft parts, that's on our side, it's true, but we also have to understand who we have in front of us to make our message clear.
I love, Adrienne, when you said, and then Koosje, you just sort of put the nail on the head, so to speak, asking for what you want. Ask. Find that person. Find the person that you want to be your mentor, your advocate, your sponsor, all 3 different words that mean 3 different things, and we can talk about it if you'd like, right? Find that person, but then be prepared to ask for exactly what it is that you want from that person. It's not just about, can you be my mentor? Can you help me get my product into country X? That is vague, right?
Right.
It is, I need you to do X for me. I'm having X problem, and I need Y in order to solve it. Can you help me, John?
Or I need you to promote.
So I was gonna give my example, exactly. I need you to promote me because I have done X, Y, Z, and that deserves more, right? And I feel that oftentimes we will be surprised at how ready the executives who, in present day, research shows around the world, or more men than women, right? How ready the executives are to actually entertain a specific request about what it is that you want, a specific request. And so I'll give my example. So I said that I was promoted here to come here. I was appointed in September of 2017. And when my Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is the same as your Secretary of State, she called me. And she said, Nadia, I had no intention of going out on a posting. I had been to Geneva previously, and I was very comfortable at home. I was going to stay in Ottawa for another couple of years. She called me and she said, you know what, we are going down a very rocky road with the United States now as it relates to trade. We need trade experts out in the field, and we need senior level people who know trade and understand trade policy and understand the dynamics of trade negotiations to be out in the field in the United States. So I'm tapping you. And she said, and moreover, Nadia, we need some representation. Canada had never had a Black woman head a mission abroad before, and we had very few women in general head missions abroad. So very few women who were consuls general, ambassadors, or high commissioners around the world. And so she said, you know what, my government, our government, is all about inclusion and diversity. And so we're tapping you. You're ready, you know the file, you know the United States, you're going. And we need more women, and we need more diverse women. So I said, okay, all right, let me think about it. I said yes. Said, yeah, let me think about it, yeah, right? When you're, when the Secretary of State calls you, let me think about it. Yeah, all right, yeah, okay, I guess I'll go. But then, as I was preparing, I started to hear the chatter, right? The chatter from colleagues. So let's get real, right? The chatter from colleagues. Oh, Nadia, I mean, she's not even 40 yet. She's going out as a head of mission. Well, what has she done? What has she done that's different than anybody else? Oh, I'm sure she only got the job because she's a Black woman. I mean, they're trying to get women, this government, they're trying to get women abroad, and, she's a woman and she's a Black woman, so of course they're gonna send her. I mean, darn, I would have gotten to go, but for the fact that Nadia is a Black woman, so they need to send her, right? The chatter. And so I decided to call my Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Secretary of State, and ask her to do something specific for me. And what I asked her to do specifically is when she was announcing all of the people who were going to go out that year, when she was announcing who the Prime Minister had approved, I asked her, I want you to spend more time talking about the fact that I was Canada's Deputy Chief Negotiator to the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations, that I headed up the Canada-EU Secretariat for the trade agreement that we negotiated with the EU, that I served in Geneva, both at the World Trade Organization and the United Nations, that I served as Chief of Staff to 2 deputy ministers prior to this. I want you to spend more time talking about that than I do you talking about the fact that I'm a woman and I'm Black. And I understand, and I said to her, I understand that that is part of your political brand, and that you would like to spend a lot of time talking about that. I get that. But what I need you to do for me, in order to help me to gain the political capital that I need going abroad, is to talk more about my skill set, more about what I have done in the past. People will see who I am. They will see who I am when I show up. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about that too, but I need you to do more of that for me. And so it was a specific ask. It was a specific ask that I made, understanding the challenges that I would face as a woman going out abroad, working amongst colleagues who had, as you all very rightly said, preconceived notions about why you were here, why you were showing up, and why you were chosen to show up. And so to me, that is a concrete example of how we as women can very much take our destiny into our own hands, right? And really ask for what we want and understand what biases we might have and what, I don't know the English word, what fears, for lack of a better word, we might have going into a job, a position, going abroad, and then asking for the support of somebody that can help us to overcome that fear and to overcome that little, that I can't think of the English word, the little fear, like the apprehension, thank you. The apprehension that we might have when we're going abroad. If you ask somebody to big you up in a way that is going to help you overcome those apprehensions, you will find that people are more than happy to do that, more than happy to do that. And I find that oftentimes when we talk about allies and sponsors and mentors even, as women, we often talk about absolutely people making those connections for us and introducing us to the right people. All of that is very important. But what I also think is very important is using the people in your life that can actually talk about what you are good at to other people who can then help you to move things along, right? So it's not necessarily about making the introduction. It's not necessarily about connecting you to person X, Y, and Z. It might be, and that's why when we talk about sponsors and when we talk about allies, to me, in my life, the best sponsors and allies that I have ever had, I never knew I had. Never knew I had until years later. When I was chosen to be the Deputy Chief Negotiator for the Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations, it was only when we were concluding the negotiations, so 3 years later, 3 years later from when I had been chosen, that the Chief Negotiator said to me, "You know why you got this job?" I said, "Well, no, actually, I don't know." I mean, I thought, because for whatever reason, my skill set. And it was only then that she said, "No, in fact, your boss that you had worked with years before on the Canada-Jordan FTA, years before, Bruce Christie, I'm giving him a shout out, even though, he's all the way back in Ottawa. He had called her when he had seen my name on the short list, because all the senior executives get all, the short list of the candidates who are going up to become a senior executive. He had seen my name on the list, and he had called the chief negotiator and said, "You need to hire Nadia. She did an amazing job on the Canada-Jordan FTA. She did this, and with me. She made sure that this got done. She was able to make relationships with these people." He advocated for me without me even knowing, right? It wasn't about an introduction to the chief negotiator. I did that on my own. But it's about making sure that the people who know your work and who know your worth are able to talk to other people about you so that when the time comes, you get that opportunity. So that's my Shayla, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, I'm just listening to you.
Yeah. So that's my example of really using your power, so to speak, to help you along the journey for years to come, not just in the immediate, but for years to come.
Nadia,
Yes.
I do have something
Yes,
to say.
please.
Okay. So when we're asking for people to assist us and advocate on our behalf, I would always put a date. Like if you ask somebody to do something on your behalf, ask them also when. When can this be done? Or when can we work together? So that you have a set deadline and a set expectation. Because if you're just asking and you're just blowing in the wind, when will you get it? It's a year from now? Is it a month from now? So always ask the when while you're asking.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up a little bit for a little bit of a conversation with the audience. I'm gonna ask, does anybody have a question off the bat? Because otherwise I'm gonna put somebody on the spot. Yes, you and the lovely reddish, yes. You give yes.
I currently do business with Australia.
Okay.
With a woman in Australia.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you. What is your business? First, tell us what your name is and what your business is, what you do. And then after.
My business is, I'm an electrical contractor. That's my first business.
Excellent.
But I also have a company called Women Do Everything. And I connect quite often with women in Australia and Canada, the tradeswomen. And that's how I was introduced to her. And the lady there owns a brand called Handy Girl Australia. And I bought into the rights for Handy Girl USA. And in doing I'm from Mississippi, and I didn't know, according to the culture, like if they would have an issue with me being African American. Well, I wanted to know what barriers there were. And what I found out is they really focus on the business.
Right.
It's like, it's not the same as down south or when we're here. they focus on what are your intentions, what are you trying to do, and in Australia and in Canada, the tradeswomen are a lot further along than we are in the U.S. I don't know if people know that, but it was very, other than the times, you know, 'cause I have to talk to them at night, and I'm in the morning there. Other than the time zone, I didn't really have to change, you know, get used to much. But what I wanted to know, when you're so far away, like they've invited me to come there for 2 weeks, and you know, I'll stay at everybody's house, and they want me to come stay at their house. I'm like, we don't do that. You know, I was thinking that, but I didn't, you know, I didn't want to offend them. But how important is it to come and be there in their culture for an extended amount of time? A little bit far past my comfort zone, they're like in the middle of nowhere with kangaroos downtown.
So I would
It's very important.
Adrienne and then Koosje.
Okay, I would say you have to ask yourself, how important is it for you to grow your business? Because this is based on relationships. So if they invite, number one, it's an honor to be invited. Because everyone doesn't invite you into their home. And so I would, you know, ask yourself that, because you're putting up barriers for yourself where they have opened up the door. And so you're from Mississippi, you know how to be hospitable. When you go take a gift from Mississippi, share in the culture. But it really is, they want to get to know you because they really do enjoy doing business with people that they like. It's not just you're gonna get the contract for whatever reason. So reconsider that and call them back and get your plane.
But they
book your
waiting on me
flight.
to tell them when I'm coming. I'm like,
Yes.
2 whole weeks. And I was thinking of, you know, staying in the hotel, and I was like, they was like, no, you'll stay with that. I was like, I don't know. So I'm saying, you're right, I have barriers for myself. And it's like, if something happened, like, I'm not there with y'all, I don't know nothing, you know.
Toya, do you have to go by yourself? Can you bring your colleague or someone that also works in your business?
Well, they invited, you know, me and my son. They invited me and my son, so you know,
What do you say?
Yeah,
I would bring someone.
yeah, well, I do understand perhaps as a woman it is a little bit challenging to go there. It's far away. I just came back from 2-month Australia, and I can highly recommend you to go there because it is fantastic. They are very relaxed people. They are very welcoming. And one of my, I wrote down a few do's and don'ts, and one of my do's were, are you ready to relocate, to move to another city? Because if you want to do business globally, you want to know the people, you want to know the culture, you want to know what kind of state otherwise it stays far away. You want to get immersed in that warm bath. You will probably have that, because I learned that indeed in Australia, it doesn't matter where you come from, they are very curious. They will ask you, where do you come from? What are your background? Much more direct here than in the United States, because I have to take care of my words. I mean, I don't know if I may ask you, where do you come from? What's your family? What is your birthday? That's not done in the United States. Well, back in my place I found, in which year were you born? That's normal. Might be in Australia as well. So when you go there, you get a feeling how they deal with people, if you want to do business with them before they want to do business with you. So go there. It's fantastic, even for your son. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
It's a fantastic experience. You might go and live there.
And what I would say is, don't go there and know that you are not going to have the same experience that you would have if you were going to New York City to explore an opportunity for your business, or if you were going even maybe to Canada, right, to explore an opportunity for your business. And go with the realization that you will probably have a funny experience. I'm sure all of you, maybe give you know what, I'll ask the panel, each of you, give a funny experience that you have had abroad. It'll help you be a little bit more comfortable. Let each of them give you a funny, you know, funny now, but maybe not funny then experience right? That you had while traveling abroad. Look, we'll help you out. We'll get you comfortable.
So I'm a picky eater, and I was in Shanghai, China, and they like different exotic kind of foods, things that still move. And and so, like everyone said up here, they're very about like wanting to get to know you. They want to break bread with you, live in their home, hang out. It's really that then business. So for me, I'm a picky eater. So they put some things on my plate, and the table it goes in a circle, right? And it's beautiful. But they put some things on my plate that I technically would have never put on my plate. So what I did was I pretended that I was eating, and I wiped my mouth a little bit, and then I pretended like I was eating, but I didn't put enough on my plate to actually taste the food. So you can be strategic in that, but I still had to break bread. Like I still had to become, because to them that's disrespectful.
Yes.
So that, to me, that was funny. It wasn't funny then, because I was just like, oh my God, my stomach, what am I gonna do? But I look back now, it's funny, you know, how I strategically went around that. And I just wanted to add one thing. When you go to Australia, Gold Key Service, they can help, you know, align some things for you in Australia while you go there to just help kind of ease that anxiety. But I definitely would go and embark and thrive and have a great time. But contact Gold Key Service.
And when you say it's offensive, that's the last thing that told an idea of love is not busy.
Yes.
And they go, yeah, I mean, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And she's part of a tribe.
She's indigenous. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I had to meet her mama and
Yeah.
the different people in the
Yeah.
tribe.
And you'll have to eat with them. They want you to eat.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Other funny experiences that you can share to make our friend comfortable.
Well, it's indeed also with eating. That was in Burkina Faso. It's really dark in the center of Africa, and I was invited with my ex-husband by those days, and it was on the how do you call the no, that's the most important day for the Muslim people. The Ramadan. Thank you. The end of the Ramadan. Yeah, well, I forgot the name. So that was really awkward because I'm sorry to say that, but they cut the throat of the animal. They will open it up and they take out the intestines and they will grill it for you and they will serve it to you. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm not going to eat that. I'm not. You did a very good thing, but I'm not, because, and we were the guests of honor, and I really didn't know what to do with it. So I thought, okay, I'm not going to eat it. My ex-husband, he did eat, but I didn't. I said, I'm very sorry, but in the Netherlands, it is very not done to eat intestines. It's not my religion, but it's against my habits to eat them. So I'm very willing to eat a piece of meat of what you offer me, but it's against my habits to eat it because I couldn't do that. Mm-hmm. So it was a little awkward, but in the end, I shared my experience, what is not done in the Netherlands, and it is not done in the Netherlands, to eat it. But one recommendation, that's part of the funny story, or the awkward story of it, but one of the things you have to learn that the English in the United States is different than in Australia or in Europe. Because when you are saying, that's not bad, what does it mean to you?
That is still bad.
Okay. I learned that if you say it's not bad, that it might be interesting.
Yeah.
You can go on. I would say, oh gosh, she doesn't like my proposal. Mm-hmm. And when you say, that's interesting, what does it mean to you? What would you say?
That's interesting.
We'll consider it.
Say that something is interesting,
You don't like
it's kind of like we haven't decided what it's
Okay,
about.
and I would understand, oh, she's interested in my proposal.
No.
So there is a difference, although you speak the same language, it doesn't mean the same. And be aware of that, because the Australians, they're talking a slightly different English than here.
Yeah, that's good.
So the differences in phrases might be really different.
Okay, my funny story, it wasn't really funny to me. I don't really like the outdoors and camping or anything like that, right? So I was invited in Botswana to go out into the bush, and everyone was just so excited about it because it's where Out of Africa was filmed, in the middle of, like, out in the bush with a lot of wild animals. And so I went, but I wasn't comfortable, but I braved it, you know, but, and it was gorgeous. But I will say, as a Girl Scout, I broke out in hives at Girl Scout camp. And I knew that I was gonna have the same experience. So all I did was say, you know, I'm happy to go for a night versus 4 days because I have other business that I need to take care of. But I slept in my clothes, because all I could think of was we would have to move out somewhere and I'd have on a nightgown trying to run out, you know, or something, because there were monkeys on top of my, you know, little hut thing. And it was beautiful, but I rode the elephant. I did all those things. I don't like animals that much. It was a challenge for me, but I knew it was an honor to be able to experience that. And it was top notch. It was really, really beautiful. And, but the noises, just being in the bush, when you don't like animals, like I don't like the cricket sounds here. So I could not sleep. It was all of that for me. But I braved it, and I'm here. Nothing ate me, nothing bit me.
Out of your comfort zone, but also knowing your limitations. I like it. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Yes, my name is Tyrone Gorham. I'm the Senior Supply Diversity Manager for Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Great panel, great discussion. I'm in awe of what you women are doing, phenomenal. My question is this, which goes back to Tanya's experience. Are there any classes that you guys offer to prepare people who are going abroad?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question.
So right now, currently ACE, Access to Capital Entrepreneurs, or you just go to ace.org, they actually have a workshop coming up. I believe it's May 5th, and it's about export, import business. So helping you build that strategy. Score.org, they have a workshop called Develop, Export, Import, and it's an educational series. So it's not just a one-day class, it's more of an 8-week class. And it's very cost effective and it's very informative. So I would start there. And then also, like I keep mentioning, trade.gov, export.gov, they have amazing webinars that you can just watch on your own time. And so there's a lot of resource that can assist you.
Yeah, I think for this organization, we need to try to make sure that that's an ongoing event that we can incorporate in this conference.
That's actually a great idea.
Because what you guys are doing today is pretty much connecting the world with the United States. And I just think that is the future of this economy. We're global now, and we need to have access to those global opportunities. But I think on this side, we're limited in our experiences because we think that we know everything. And like we said, the cultural barriers that we have is embarrassing for us to them when we go abroad and we don't know.
That's right. Absolutely. And sorry, go ahead. Do you have any other tips for
No, I was
education
just gonna
resources?
say we could put something together even.
Yeah, I have another tip, which is, it has to do with your name. I mean, I don't know if you see my name. A lot of people do not understand that I'm a woman abroad. So that is an advice. If you want to be known as a woman entrepreneur, write in front of it Mrs. or Miss, whatever, or make yourself clear and make them clear that it is that you're a woman.
The other tip for educational resources that I would provide is, along with the resources that trade.gov or export.gov or all of the US-based resources that might be available, a lot of times if you find resources that other governments or companies in other countries are providing to their exporters, it's all transferable knowledge, right? I mean, it's all the same, or tips and resources and how-tos and how not to's that you can use in your own business here. So for example, I'll give you a concrete example. Export Development Canada which is really like your IXIM Bank here in the United States, but with a Canadian flair. They actually just opened up this week an office here in Atlanta. They're co-located with our Consulate General here. And they have webinars that you just go onto their website, you sign up online for them, and it's the same thing, you can do them on your own time, you sign up, and then if you're not able to actually participate live in the webinar, you can download it afterwards. The resources, so it is based for, it's developed for the purposes of Canadian companies that are looking to export, right? And that are looking for financing in order to reach hard to reach markets. But the resources that they provide vis-a-vis those markets, I mean, it's the same, right? It's about foreign markets and how to enter those foreign markets. So frankly, a lot of times when I'm approached here in the United States, because a lot of companies, American companies approach me, not realizing that, you know, my job is really to help Canadian businesses looking to export or American businesses looking to expand into Canada in particular. But I often refer them to Export Development Canada and refer them to that website and refer them to those webinars. And I've had very good feedback actually from the companies, from American companies saying, wow, that webinar on X issue, because they put issue-based or country-based, was fantastic. Because maybe trade.gov here in the United States doesn't have a webinar on how to enter the Indonesian market. Maybe they haven't, you know, maybe they haven't done that yet. And so the resources available from Export Development Canada in terms of the webinars can actually help you as well. So I would do that, like do a little bit of research on other countries that you might already be doing business with or that you are close to. You know, Canada is the United States' best friend, partner, and ally, so a lot of resources that the Canadian government might provide Canadian companies vis-a-vis other countries could be useful to you, and we have similar cultures. So a lot of that information might be useful to you as well. So I would check out Export Development Canada as well as a resource. Other questions?
Hi.
Yes.
Yes, ladies. Thank you so much for the panel. My name is Elisa Clark, President of Glory Professional Cleaning Services, and I am also operating outside of the U.S., but I feel I'll be a case study. So what I'd like is each lady's card. This has just been phenomenal. We're getting ready to renew, but I missed it on a couple of fronts. I mean, I feel here, but the information is gonna, I mean, even though we're succeeding and we will renew, it's just for future. I'd like to reach out and talk to you lady on some of my exports.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question, if there's one more question in the audience. Yes, please.
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Yes.
I have to say, I've been in a lot, I'm probably the oldest person in the room, I've been in a lot of conferences, a lot of sessions, and this is one of the best sessions, one of the most informative.
Thank you. Thank you.
I knew when I came in the room, and you just never know, but I wanted to share that, because now I'm like, I had really no desire to do business overseas. I've got, you know, a wealth of blessings in business here, but I'm chomping at the bit now. I've got to do something, and you ladies have a great brain trust. And I'll share this with you. The African-American male is the lowest rung in American society. So you ladies, my white Caucasian sisters need to know that and understand that. And I share that with you because we're riding in the same boat. As you think about women,
Yes.
The African-American males have been in that boat all along, thrown out of it as many times as they could possibly throw us out of it. So we sail in the same ship. You know,
Yeah.
we just need to collaborate.
Thank you for sharing.
You know, sorry, go ahead. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you
for
so
sharing.
much. Thank you for
Something in my
sharing
thank
that.
you. Please.
I just wanted to share something. Oh, okay. I'm kind of boisterous, but okay. I just wanted to share something when you were talking about language, and I was in Lagos, Nigeria, and I was having the opportunity to eat, and I was trying to find some things that I was familiar with. And so they said yams, and so I'm thinking, yams, yes, I can do yams. But what they brought back to the table was like this white floury dumpling that I had to eat, and it was a yam, and so that even the language, you know, you associate here, and that's what I did. I'm thinking some red sweet potatoes. But what I got was to me, a bowl full of flour, but I ate it. I did, I understood. They were very proud. They told me how they made it. And so just being respectful of other people's culture and other people's food, you know, and that was very embracing for them. And even they changed my name. They told me how they said my name, and, you know, trying to learn some things in their language. They're always just, oh, she said this, you know. And so it's just like making friends. You know, here in the United States, you and your friend may not all have the same likes and dislikes, and there are some things you do just because your friend is gonna enjoy that. And I think when you go to another country, another culture, that you will do some things just because, like you wrote The Elephant, is culturally to say, I accept you the way you're being accepted.
Absolutely. And I have to, because Daphne's in the room now, so I have to repeat what our gentleman said. You missed it, Daphne. He said this is one of the best panels that he has ever participated in, ever. So thank you, Daphne. Thank you, Daphne, for curating it. Thank you.
So what we're going to do, because it is so phenomenal, Thea and I are trying to figure out how we can like podcast it.
Yes.
Being recorded, so we're gonna get it out there, because this is amazing.
Excellent. And you know, and then I know I'm under manners with my time, so I've got 4 minutes. So don't. And I just wanted to say a tip that came to my head when you talked about the Black American, sorry, African American. You guys say African American here. I apologize. African American man, and the place in society when it comes to, I'm sure, lots of different things, but business thrown out of the boat, so to speak. It sparked me to give this tip to people. When you are going into another country, be mindful, especially as women or as a Black person, going abroad, you might view yourself as hard, you know, being at the bottom rung, right? And you might bring that to the other country, but in another country, you might not be. Right? Yeah, or that you might be elevated. Yes. Or frankly, this idea of supplier diversity, this idea of inclusion and diversity mean different things in different countries. And I give you an example close to home, because we always say that Canada and the United States are very, very strong partners. We have similar cultures and values, absolutely. But I will tell you, in Canada, the Indigenous person, man and woman, are at the bottom, and I say this freely because our Prime Minister has said it freely, has said it at the United Nations in New York City, gotten up on that pulpit and said, we need to do better by our Indigenous people. And so in Canada, when you come with supplier diversity ideas, absolutely, as a Black man, as a woman, you will have access to those funds. But frankly, in Canada, the people that they are trying to tap most importantly are our Indigenous communities. You guys call them Native Americans here. So our Indigenous communities are the ones that have been thrown aside historically in Canada the most. So that's just an example of how when you go to different countries, even the idea of diversity and inclusion and supplier diversity is different depending on the country that you're going to. So do that research.
And I want to add just one thing to make it different, really different. You said that the African American male here is at the bottom. If you would go to Africa, to Nigeria, or to Senegal, to Burkina Faso, you would be considered as the wise old man, excuse me to say it, who can teach something to all the others. So a difference in culture is so important. You would be hailed as somebody who can teach the others and be an example. So that is something different also in culture. I really wanted to emphasize that. That makes, and thank you for sharing it, because it opened up a little bit my eyes. I was not aware of that. I'm only 3 months in Atlanta, and thank you for sharing this what you said, because it opens my eyes as well. So we have to pay more attention to that as well. Thank you.
So African American men, you guys are what I call unrestricted existence. You have unrestricted existence. And maybe in this country, they don't recognize it, but as you travel abroad, they know it. They're willing to talk to you, even as women, but I'm speaking specifically to the men, that they are waiting for you to show up. That's what they're waiting for. And you can do that. And so
He's ready. He's packed his bag.
Are your bags packed?
Yeah, I mean, go abroad.
I love it. Okay, so listen, I have 30 seconds, and I'm gonna give you four words. When you leave this room, I'm gonna give you 4 words. Relationships, right? Write it down. Patience. Teamwork, and knowledge, research, preparedness. Those are all, I'm putting that all under one word. Do your research. Patience, relationships, team, research, knowledge, resources. If you take anything away today, take away those 4 things. Go out into the world. The world is global. Your customers are out there in the world beyond these 4 walls of the United States of America. There are resources to help you. Thank you all so much for participating. I'm glad you enjoyed. Really?